Developed as part of the Peasant Project, the Galbaldy Alpha was one of the final machines made by the Principality of Zeon, and rumor had it that it was one of their deadliest too. Some sources say that it was meant to be the successor of the Gyan, but then got some Gelgook elements incorporated after the latter won the arms race for Zeon's next generation mass production mobile suit, whereas other sources say that it was designed to give the Gelgook the close combat capabilities of the Gyan. Whichever version it was though, it managed to combine both of these mobile suits into one streamlined package that was also conformed with the United Maintenance Plan for easy production. Initially, plans were drafted for two different types. The A-type would be designed for use in atmosphere and was meant to be capable of self-sustained flight. It would be lighter, have more powerful thrusters, and would get Gelgook-style thermonuclear jet engines attached to its arms. The B-type then would be the space version. However, during development, the A-type would be scratched, and only the B-type made it to the prototype stages. This B-type then became the Galbaldy Alpha that we all know today. And thanks to its great overall performance, the quote-unquote space type was also perfectly usable on land as well. During testing though, another more unfortunate thing would also be discovered. Even though the Galbaldy was supposed to boast higher mobility than contemporary mobile suits, only ace pilots could truly unlock the full potential of this fearsome mobile suit, and in the hands of a regular pilot, it would only perform marginally better than the Gelgook. This, combined with the fact that the war was soon coming to a close, meant that only a handful of Galbaldys would be produced, and even less of them saw any action. For the most part, they just participated in small-scale skirmishes around the Peasant asteroid, where they were also being produced. One popped up at Abawaku, and another one would appear in Zoom City, piloted by Fillius Stream as part of the Imperial Guard. This particular unit was outfitted with a Gyan-style beam saber, a knuckle shield, and a commander antenna. And after stopping an attempted coup, this particular unit was destroyed. And talking about the weapons, possibly due to its introduction so late into the war, it's not known what the Galbaldy Alpha's standard weapons layout was meant to be, other than a shield that was very similar to the one used by the Gelgook, albeit significantly smaller. Most sources settle on giving the machine a Gelgook beam rifle and a Gyan beam saber, but in some other sources, we see some slightly different weapons. In this illustration, it has a different shield and beam saber, and in the Fukuchi Mobile Suit Station, we see a quite different beam rifle that the Galbaldy would supposedly be outfitted with. And according to the same source, many of the Galbaldy's testing would be carried out on the Zwar-class high-speed cruiser Gar-Aus. And when it became clear that the war was over, many of the remaining Galbaldys were loaded onto it and brought to Axis, along with many of the engineers who worked on it. Some of these Galbaldys would then be used by Axis as is, but some of them would be further customized, like the Galbaldy Alpha High Mobility type. Its legs were upgraded with the same high mobility parts as the legs of the Gelgook High Mobility Type R, its backpack got overhauled for greater mobility, and it got a new set of weapons: the Gelgook Jaeger's beam machine gun and the Gyan's beam saber and shield. In September of UC 0084, this unit, along with a standard Galbaldy Alpha, were tasked with escorting a DeWas Custom from Axis to an Anaheim facility on Gronda. En route though, they were engaged by the Titans' 7th Platoon, consisting of 2 Jim Quells, a Jim Sniper 2, and the Pale Rider D2. They were able to successfully beat them back, but the Galbaldy Alpha High Mobility type did suffer heavy damage. The Federation, meanwhile, would also get their hands on some Galbaldys when the one-year war ended. Impressed by their performance, the decision was quickly made to further develop them and push them into service for the Federation. What of course also very much helped with this decision was the fact that the Federation was in dire financial straits after the war, so they needed quick and cheap ways to bolster their forces, especially after what happened during the Delos conflict. The first prototype of the upgraded Galbaldy was rolled out in 0083 and was then officially dubbed the Galbaldy Beta, which was also the point when the first Galbaldy was renamed from just Galbaldy to Galbaldy Alpha. The upgrades, though, do seem to have been mostly skin deep. The thrusters were upgraded and the armor was overhauled, making the unit lighter, but the internals seem to have remained mostly the same. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, I guess. Just like the Alpha then, the machine was initially regarded as being difficult to pilot and was only meant to be produced for ace pilots. Something must have changed though, because later on, pilots would actually say that the machine was easy to pilot. Mass production of the Beta began in 0084, and in UC 0085 it would receive one more upgrade, a panoramic cockpit and a linear seat, which was of course an upgrade that almost all mobile suits of the Federation received at that time. For the weapons then, its main weapon was an upgraded Gelgoog beam rifle. Older sources simply list this as a Gelgoog beam rifle, but with an upgraded sensor, which would then suggest that it still uses the older ECAP technology. But according to the manual of the high-grade model kit, it is powered by a replaceable E-Pack, which is stored in the handle. For extra firepower then, it now has two built-in missile launchers on the shield, which is very different from the one used by the Alpha. Not only did it now have built-in weaponry, but its shape was also completely different and came with an extending mechanism. And for close combat, it came with one or two standard issue beam sabers. As for where they're stored, there are two different explanations. In the original Zeta Gundam anime, it just has the single beam saber, which is stored on the left side of the backpack. However, due to the way the main beam saber grabbing scene in the anime was shot, it led to some confusion as to where the beam saber was actually coming from. Right before the Galbaldy grabs onto its beam saber, its shoulder armor gets damaged, revealing a hole in it. And because the scene then instantly cuts to the Galbaldy grabbing its beam saber, some people were led to assume that it was grabbing the beam saber from that hole in the shoulder armor. Fast forward to the compilation movies then, where they reanimated this scene with that wrong assumption. So from the compilation movies onwards, the Galbaldy Beta is now said to be equipped with two beam sabers stored behind the thrusters in the shoulders. And what it also had was a signal flare launcher installed in the head. It carries two different types of flares with 5 rounds each for a total of 10 flares. Overall, the Galbaldy Beta was a very successful design and would quickly become the Federation's third most produced unit after the Jim 2 and the Hyzak, and it would also be favorably compared to them. Most sources would estimate its performance as slightly above that of the Gelgoog and at about the same level as the Jim 2 and the Hyzak, but some would even go as far as to compare it to the performance of the Marasai. The Galbaldy Beta was particularly praised for its mobility, with the only real complaint levied against it being its older and weaker titanium alloy armor, whereas other newer mobile suits were moving towards the stronger Gundarium alloy. Still, this was a weakness that it shared with the Jim 2 and the Hyzak, who were using a similar titanium alloy ceramic composite for their armor. Just as with the Hyzak though, not all pilots were initially thrilled about piloting a very Zeon-esque machine, especially those pilots who served throughout the 1-year war. But thanks to its performance, it wouldn't take long for the machine to be accepted, and it would be used by the Federation's Granada garrison, and especially by the forces in Luna 2, where the main production facilities for the Galbaldy Beta were located. And it wasn't just the Federation who were interested in using this fantastic machine. Some units would also be used by the Titans, and one of these machines would be modified into the Galbaldy Beta High Mobility type, and then assigned to the Titan's test team. This machine was painted in the typical T3 colors, its legs were modified with extra thrusters, and its backpack was also completely reworked to be compatible with the equipment used by the Titan's test team. It now got a high mobility booster pod that had one hardpoint on either side. Its most common equipment were 2 shield boosters, but much more equipment was also planned to be used and tested by this machine. We'll get into why it was only planned in a second. Taken from the Hyzac cannon, it could be outfitted with a conventional 240mm cannon and missile pod combo, and it was also supposed to test out a beam smart gun and sensor radome combo, which would later on be used for the Gazu-1. And to further increase its firepower and mobility, it got a modified version of the Kahar space type's shoulders on its chest. These could quickly stop the high mobility type during high-speed maneuvers, and they also had a mounting point for extra ammunition. Either a drum magazine for the Zaku machine gun Kai, or a double E-pack for the T3 signature short-barreled beam rifle. Another optional piece of equipment was a slightly modified version of the Beta's standard beam rifle, which now had a shorter stock for making it easier to use during high-speed combat. And for shields, it could choose between the standard Galbaldy shield, the standard Hyzac shield, or the standard Jim Quell shield. In short, the Galbaldy Beta high mobility type was shaping up to be a very versatile unit, and initial testing was also very promising. So promising, in fact, that plans were already being made to develop this prototype into the advanced Galbaldy Beta, sometimes also referred to as the Galbaldy Gamma. And while it is still recognizable as a Galbaldy, the Gamma got almost a complete overhaul. The only thing that remained the same were the arms. The head no longer has the signal flare launcher and got a big antenna, the chest armor was completely revamped, it got sub-arms on the front skirts, the legs got more and bigger thrusters, and the backpack was changed to the multi-connector pod, which allowed for better compatibility with the backpacks that the Titan's test team were testing out. For example, the tri-booster unit, shield boosters, and the other options planned for the Galbaldy Beta high mobility type. And in terms of weapons, it used a customized version of the Fedayeen rifle used by the Gaz-L. The general shape is the same, but it has a bigger sensor, an underslung grenade launcher, and it was powered by a double E-pack. And for extra shots, a spare double E-pack could be mounted on its shield. Again, things were looking really good for this new Galbaldy. But then something unexpected happened. The test pilot, Maxim Gunner, defected to the AUG, and he took the Galbaldy Beta high mobility type and all of its data with him. For the Federation and the Titans, this meant that their new main test machine was gone, and all of the plans for the advanced Galbaldy Beta were now carried over to a modified Hazel, the Advanced Hazel. For the AUG and their Anaheim Masters though, this meant that they got valuable data. Data that would be used for Anaheim branded shield boosters, which would in turn be used for the Rig Diaz Stutzer and the Nemo cannon. But this wasn't the end for the advanced Galbaldy Beta, because according to Advance of Zeta Reboot, an advanced Galbaldy Beta was actually made for the Titans' Black Hair Spec Ops team. Whether this unit was actually used or not remains a mystery due to the top secret nature of the team using it. We do have 2 images of it though, one with the tri-booster unit and one with a new kind of shield booster. When the Grips War ended then, the Black Hairs reorganized themselves as the Tristan fleet, and rather than surrendering to the Federation/AUG, they fled to Mars, along with a bunch of high-tech top-of-the-line mobile suits, amongst them being the advanced Galbaldy Beta. These then fell into the hands of Re-Zeon to bolster their forces. The advanced Galbaldy Beta was repainted in Re-Zeon's standard red color scheme and would even see some limited production with the customized Fedayeen rifle and the tri-booster unit as its standard equipment. Some of these units, though, would meet with a less glorious fate. They were downgraded and instead used for construction purposes. And these wouldn't be the only Galbaldy variants used by Zeon remnants. Allegedly, through ex-Zeon personnel working at Anaheim, Hamon's Neo Zeon got their hands on the data for the Galbaldy beta. And they then, again allegedly, used this data to develop two almost identical mobile suits that would be assigned to Hamon's Royal Guard unit, the Gazu-R and Gazu-L. And while on the surface not much seems to have been changed, their insides did get quite a substantial upgrade. They had a new generator, more powerful thrusters, Gundarium alloy, and more powerful weapons that mostly focused on close combat. Although that is not to say that they didn't have any very powerful ranged options, as evidenced by their two hyper beam sabers that are stored on the backpack. When stored, they can function as powerful beam cannons, and when handheld, they can either be used as individual beam sabers or combined into the Twin Lancer. And their other signature weapon was the Heat Lance. Despite using Zeon's more outdated heat weapon technology instead of beam technology, this weapon proved to be highly efficient in actual combat. And if necessary, they also had two beam sabers that were stored in the arm-mounted shield. For the Gazu-R, this was the right arm, and for the Gazu-L, this was the left arm. The one weapon that did remain the same though was the beam rifle, although with one small caveat. On the Gazu-R, the beam rifle was typically used in the left hand and the sensor remained on the right side, whereas on the Gazu-L, the beam rifle was typically used in the right hand and the sensor was changed to the left side. And later on then, they would get one upgrade to their weapons. Initially, the flared shoulder armor was just there for decoration, but then later on, it was changed to also house a missile launcher and mines. Smaller changes with the Federation's Galbaldy beta then was the inclusion of a commander antenna, extra armor on the toes, and ornate markings to go along with their striking silver color scheme. So despite looking very similar to the Galbaldy beta, the Gazu-R and Gazu-L really took the design to the limit. And there was also a very good reason for the asymmetrical design of both units. As members of the Royal Guard, these machines were designed to escort either Hamon Khan and the Cubile, who was the leader of Neo Zeon, or Karasun and the Game Lock, who is the leader of the Royal Guard. The Gazu-R, piloted by Ni Gillen, would take the right flank, and the Gazu-L, piloted by Lance Gillen, would take the left flank. Despite being excellent units though, they would be shot down during the Zeon Civil War at the end of the first Neo-Zeon War. But they were brought back as the Gazu-L Grau and the Gazu-R Grau. Pretty much just patched up units with a new grey color scheme, which is then also where their new name came from. Grau is German for grey. And what they also lack is the ornate markings from their Royal Guard days, because their new pilots were no longer part of the Royal Guard. As for the other changes, other than a few minor armor overhauls, it mainly comes down to the weapons. What remained the same were the arm-mounted shield with two standard beam sabers, the Galbaldy-esque beam rifle, and the Heat Lance. The changes then were that the flared shoulder armor weapon pod was now replaced by a more straightforward missile launcher, they got a Galbaldy-esque shield on the opposite arm, and the large beam sabers on the backpack have been slightly downgraded. While they can still combine, they can no longer be used as beam cannons, and they were also slightly smaller. But again, these were two very powerful units, although just like their originals, they would be heavily damaged in combat. And then to quickly get them back into the fight, they would be cobbled together as one unit, the Gazu Grau BB. The base unit is the Gazu-L Grau, and parts of the R were used to both fix it and slightly upgrade it. The unit now had a missile launcher and shield on each arm, and it also had extra armor plating over the cockpit, making the BB a slightly superior unit. And therefore, it has been said that the BB in the name is an abbreviation for best of both. And then to wrap up this video, we're going back to the Federation variants of the Galbaldy Beta. In UC0090, we have the Galbaldy Beta Fillius Stream Custom, a name that you probably remember from the beginning of the video. As a former Zeon soldier and Galbaldy Alpha pilot, Fillius was very familiar with how to operate the Galbaldys, so to make the most of both his skills and the Galbaldy Beta that he was using, it was upgraded with parts of the scrapped Gundam GP04, which was apparently just lying in storage over at Anaheim. The Galbaldy got a new backpack, a new shield, and a new beam rifle, making it quite a bit more deadly than the standard Beta. It also got a new blue and white color scheme, which was quite fitting considering the fact that Fillius was the commander of the Blanc Rivals Mobile Suit Team. And the second variant is this Galbaldy Beta that appears in the Project File Zeta Gundam book. This particular unit had a different backpack that looks like it's supposed to be some kind of high mobility backpack. Unfortunately, no more information is given about it, and the image is used to illustrate information about the standard Galbaldy Beta, so it might just be a different interpretation of the standard Beta. Still, I would like to imagine this as either some kind of custom Ace Pilot version, or maybe some kind of prototype version. And for completionist's sake, there's also this Thunderbolt version of the Galbaldy Alpha, which was mainly used by the South Seas Alliance. It looks quite similar to the mainline Alpha, but it did borrow quite some things from the Thunderbolt Gelgoog. It's got the same shield, the same backpack, a similar sub-arm on the right arm, and a beam rifle that's powered by the generator on the backpack, although the beam rifle is its own beam rifle. And that is where the development history of the Galbaldy ends. A high-performance, mass-production mobile suit that didn't have too many chances to shine, but when it did, it always managed to impress. As always, a big thank you to the Patreon supporters. I hope everyone watching has a great day, and I'll see you all next time.